And now to Tunisia, where hundreds of people have held fresh demonstrations in the capital, slamming austerity measures imposed by the government. Protesters took to the streets once again on the 7th anniversary of the uprising that triggered a chain of similar moves across many Arab countries. They vented their anger at price rises and demanded the budget be abandoned. Meanwhile, the Tunisian government has announced a set of social reforms, including an increase in aid to the needy and to improved health care. Protests erupted last Monday in several towns and cities across Tunisia after the government raised value-added tax and social contributions and increased some prices in its 2018 budget. The rallies have been marked by arrests and clashes between protesters and security forces. Crossing over to London, joined by Mr. Ayo Johnson, African Affairs expert. Thank you so much for being with us. Well, let's look at the situation in Tunisia. Do you think that overall it's settled down, or is it likely, actually, we're likely to see more demonstrations because of the austerity measures that the government has implemented?
Yes, President Essebsi is under huge pressure. The youths are calling for action. They're taking to the streets. They're calling for job security, which they don't have. They're asking for the economy to be better in terms of fiscal policy, which clearly is not happening. Prices of goods and services are very high, and the government has not done enough in providing access for housing and very much in terms of reforms on the medical healthcare issues. So I think Tunisians are taken to the streets with that level of frustration, but it's not the same sort of frustration that we saw 7 years ago when Ben Ali was ousted. So there is clearly a difference between the mood back then and the mood right now. Yes, the tensions are high. Yes, the government's under pressure. Yes, many people are taken to the streets, but we're not seeing the sort of revolution that we saw that cut across the Arab region, including Tunisia, which was 7 years ago. Quite different, but again, the pressure's on the government right now.
All right, it's really hard to believe that that was 7 years ago, but going back to 2011 and that Arab Spring, as it was called by many, and of course Tunisia was the first country to actually embark on that journey. What's your assessment overall then, 7 years later? Have the Tunisians overall been successful if comparing their situation to what it was under Ben Ali?
Well, Tunisians would say that nothing much has changed. Many of them would say the frustrations are still the same. Many would say that the economy hasn't picked up. The frustration that was back then is still here today. I think to an extent, Tunisians are more settled. They seem to be willing to accept what was clearly not acceptable 7 years ago. Otherwise, the demonstrations that we're seeing on the street would be 10 times more. But that in itself, I think Tunisians are very savvy individuals. They're very clever. They clearly set the pace in terms of the agenda, and they're prepared to go the extra mile if the pressure is not addressed by the government. So I would expect the government to try and quell the violence, quell the frustrations on the streets with some measures that would help key individuals on the streets. But it remains to be seen how the government will do this one.
Thank you so much for being with us out of London, Mr. Ayo Johnson, African Affairs expert.
Thank you.